Welcome to Midnight Reel. I'm your host, Jordan Pugh. On my left, Scott Phillips.
What's up, guys? I got a crowd this time.
Yeah,
I feel so evolved.
Oh, I thought it was my nose. Sorry.
Oh.
All right, Sir Patrick.
What's up?
We are back for Stranger Things Part 2. Episodes 5 through 8. We're going to finish out Season 1. And this one should be a lot faster. We kind of wanted to take a little bit more time with the first 4 episodes. Because the first 4 episodes really...
It's a lot of setup.
It's a lot of setup to over what's going to be happening in the last 4 episodes. The last four are pretty straightforward. It's kind of like just starting to tie all the ends together and make it a nice, pretty bow. Bing! Of Stranger Things.
See, I heard more of it. Ding!
Much more pronounced.
Scott's just not on his game today.
So, with that being said, you may actually end up hearing my son in the background at some point. Yeah, that's probably him. Anyways, so we're gonna just dive right in. Episode 5.
So, what'd you think?
So, okay. Now, I will say this. In my opinion, this is one of the... it's still a very good episode, by the way. It is a little bit more slow. It really just kind of goes through... kind of just more explanations about what's going on, what 11 was dealing with, kind of how everything started, as far as how the rift was opened and all that stuff. It really is just a lot more of explanation of how everything kind of happened in the first place. It's a real good dive into what 11 can do and what they were doing to her at that facility. What do you guys think?
Well, to be honest, I because it's such a binge-worthy show, I don't always know which episode is which. But this one is definitely the one where I know that Hopper, you kind of get that kind of X-Files kind of feel, because Hopper starts realizing that there's more going on to the city and the town before. I kind of dig that kind of feel, because X-Files is one of my favorite shows of all time. So, so I really enjoy that kind of stuff. This is when, even though a whole bunch of other stuff is hinted, but it's all like a red herring, and it's perfect timing for the season itself. But I really enjoyed this episode. It's like the perfect kind of turning point a really good season, especially if you're doing it over like an arc over the entire season. It really works really well.
Yeah, like I said, it's it's really cool. Like that whole sensory deprivation thing that they have. I love seeing the back and forth with the kids and their biology teacher, and how he. You get that he just loves the fact that these kids want to learn and expand on their mind and all this stuff. And so when you get Dustin calling their teacher at 8-9 o'clock at night, in the middle of the night, and just asking hey, how do you make sensory deprivation tanks? Because we're doing this for science stuff, and convinces them to just, all right, well, if you want to make a sensory deprivation tank, this is how you'd have to build it. This is what kind of water you need to use and how much salt you need to put in it. And really just kind of all right, kids, have fun.
Yeah.
You really get, it's fun to see that back and forth regardless as far as characters go, but it also kind of gives you...
While he's on a date.
Yeah, but it's great too because it also gives you more of that 80s feel on the fact of it was kind of a lot more carefree back then of hey, these kids are going to try stuff. Whatever. Cool. They'll learn. They'll either succeed and have fun, or they'll fail miserably and break something. Whatever.
It's just a leg. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. I know they kind of expand on the monster a lot now, because you're starting to actually see it as opposed to in the background of a picture, or in the you're starting to sense how scary this monster really is, and I can't remember the name of the monster that they kept
They
calling.
they refer to it as the Demogorgon.
Demogorgon.
Yeah,
that's
just
it.
as
It's not the actual name of it. That's what they decided to use,
Right.
based on their D&D
Right.
game.
I mean, it's pretty apropos because it's got that kind of unknown feel and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think this is where they start moving into where they kind of forget about Barb. I think at this point.
Well, yeah, now they kind of realize that there's a lot more ridiculous stuff going on in the background.
Don't they find like a deer or something?
Yeah, they find an injured deer right at the end of episode 5, and they end up he gets pulled away from him into the trunk of a tree.
Oh yeah, that's
and
right.
then Nancy goes after it, and then she sees the monster. This is where you really get your first really good look at the monster, and it's eating the deer. She ends up breaking a twig and drawing its attention. And she starts trying to run away from it, and that's kind of where that episode really just ends with the monster coming after Nancy.
Yeah,
because both Nancy and Jonathan were going in the woods.
searching for.
They were searching. Yeah. So then obviously we get into the episode about the monster itself, and it opens up with Nancy trying to basically escape because she's now in the Upside Down.
Right, but she doesn't realize it. She's like, "This is a really big tree."
Yeah. So and that's the thing is I want to just when we talk about dumb decisions. Now I don't know if this was on intentional dumb decision or just.
Well, I mean, this is like standard horror.
No, but
80s horror specifically.
But nonetheless, you see some kind of really messed up alien type stuff.
But they didn't really see the alien. They only saw the deer first. And
but the trunk was super
It's sort of. I think what it is. So they're walking around the woods. They're exploring the woods, and she basically
they're trying to find Barb.
Yeah, and they basically see I thought it was they saw the blood trail.
And
from
they
the
followed.
deer,
You're right.
and she kind of followed that, and that's what led her to the trunk of the tree, and then she saw that portal looking thing,
it had the alien gunk all over it.
Yeah, it's like a gooey cavern into
See,
the
that's
bottom
funny. I
trunk of this
didn't
tree.
sense it as gooey. That's really funny. It sensed it more of tendrils of a spider, kind of because you have to kind of rip it apart. You can't.
If you see it, they stick their hand and it comes out all slime and gunky and all that.
Does
crap.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a weird
maybe it's because my biggest fear is spiders, so it's
yeah,
it's very much a
I would still say I don't think
kinda.
gooey is technically the right word, but it
Even
is
that,
it is a
otherworldly.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is something that's strong yet malleable, obviously, because they can push their hand through it and then kind of have to tear it and pull it apart and all that stuff. So I mean,
I just don't know why you would go in that.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, if I saw a random blood trail leading into a tree portal,
could be in there, still alive.
Yeah,
obviously.
Barb is inside the alien portal. I mean, that's
Barb lives, bro. Barb lives.
Yeah. Well, it was
they could have candy. It's a risk you have to take.
Right. So she ends up going to the Upside Down, the whole dealing with the monster, and it opens up where she's basically running away from the monster, trying to survive. And like I said, this is where you're really getting a really good look at what the monster looks like.
So would you have rather them, instead of seeing the monster at that point, would you have rather just to still wait and get that kind of end episode where it's even more jarring? Or did you like how they kind of did all right, this is what's happening.
I mean,
I would have actually liked it if instead of let's say they see the deer, right? But instead of the deer being taken, one of them gets taken. All you see them is being dragged away. They're going after, and you see them being pulled into that trunk, which gives them a reason to go into it more because they're still alive. And then the episode opens up with the monster in front of them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that would make for a great part of that episode and stuff like that. I think this way too, you also get. I mean, it's stretching a little bit. I'll give you that, but it gives you a little bit more of up until now. Even though Nancy and Barb are friends, you almost felt that Nancy was just kind of letting Barb hang out with her kind of deal. Nancy was kind of an in-between. She wasn't she was
a part of the freaks and geeks.
Yeah, she wasn't like the prissy popular girls, and all that stuff.
She was too educated.
But she also wasn't the one that people would see in the hallway and just immediately dismiss and throw aside and not want to talk to, whatever.
I would only slightly disagree with it because I think it's something that she was forcing on herself because
she was forcing herself in this situation.
She obviously like Steve liked her,
right?
Or like he liked her a lot. So I mean he's the king of the school essentially. So my thinking is because it sounds like Barb and Nancy have been friends for years, and just like she basically kind of tried to distance herself from the other kids, or from her brother and his friends. Because she's like, oh, I'm a teenager now. I'm in high school. Same basic idea that with Barb. He's like, don't get me wrong. She still really liked Barb as her friend. But she also wanted to be more into that other crowd.
Right.
And she realized Barb.
Yeah, I'm not saying Nancy...
Here's the thing about the story that I thought was really interesting. Nancy is really not a necessary part of the story at all. Like I don't think
really not,
you could, if she was the one that died instead of Barb, like that would have been made for an even more interesting, I think, story.
Yeah, there would have been somebody else in the show that's really connected to that character.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm not saying that like Nancy didn't put herself in that kind of situation, but like I said, up until now, you kind of get the like, all right, yeah, Nancy and Barb were probably really good friends when they were younger, and then as Nancy started to like grow and like develop and all that stuff, she like kind of just kept Barb around because Nancy herself wanted to be...
was insecure.
Yeah, but she wanted to be in that popular crowd, and she knew Barb wasn't ever going to be, but her friendship to Barb, like, she still kept her around. She still wanted to, like, kind of keep her with her.
She enjoyed her company still. And stuff.
Right. But you never really saw that she had, like, a strong connection to Barb, and so now that Barb's gone missing...
She died pretty early.
Yeah.
If you actually think, which I think was episode 2.
Yeah, and so now that Barb's like missing, they don't know what's happened to her. They don't know where she is. But she's at the point where she's going through the woods in the middle of the night looking for her, and then she sees this blood trail, which at some point she kind of assumes like could be Barb, and then it leads into this hole in the tree. Like she's willing to take that risk of going in there to potentially find and save her friend.
But they saw the deer like dying first, and the deer got pulled away from them. Like
no, it was like dying. They didn't see the portal, and it's like dying. And they're like, "Oh, is there anything we can do?"
Yeah, and he was going to shoot it.
Yeah, right.
He was going to shoot it.
And that's when it like got pulled off. But they didn't realize where it went to.
Yeah, but they pretty much got the idea that it went into that portal area. They like the blood trail led to them.
What I'm saying is like they didn't.
But again, that just kind of solidifies. I think that same thing too. Where like so now they've had this deer that they found dead that just like quote unquote like disappears. And that's
the first time they're being introduced to like the upside down, because as far as they're concerned, it was just a serial killer or a murderer or like this or a kidnapper, or that she was just lost in the woods, or because they weren't considering. I mean, maybe Jonathan was, but like they weren't considering that there was like a huge thing, like a whole other world.
Yeah.
This like a testing lab and like all this stuff, So I don't know. I found it very interesting, and I felt like it was very smooth in general, like the way the story kind of developed in that regard, and it was kind of like in a Crash where they like all the stories kind of converge at the end, so it kind of works out that way. But I mean, honestly, I could have like losing the entire story with Nancy is like I didn't really care. I don't care for her as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I still appreciate it. Like I don't think nothing really felt forced. And even though, like, yeah, I completely agree with you, Joe, that, like, yeah, it's a really dumb thing to do to, like, find a random, like, portal in a tree and decide to go through it.
Go in it, yeah.
But I still remember, like, the first time watching this, I didn't have, like, as strong of an anger towards her doing that as you do in, like, your classic 80s horror movies when you see these decisions that people are making. And you're just like, how are you so incredibly stupid that, like... you walk into, like, an empty house, and it's super dark, and you're calling for your friend, and there's no answer, and then you see, like, a silhouette in the light, and you're still calling for your friend's name. Oh, you're
funny. You're messing
then, like,
with me.
still not moving, and then, like, you're getting macheted in the face, and you're like, oh.
Well, you got the glimmer of the moonlight and the machete.
Yeah. Well, and another thing we missed on this episode, though, is the division in the group. This was actually a pretty big with the kids. This was actually a pretty big moment where... Obviously, Lucas, and like I said, this is where like I understand the motivations behind Lucas, but I always like I said in the last episode, Lucas was kind of like hit or miss for me, just because how he dealt with it. Not that I felt he was wrong with what he was doing; it's just how he approached it. But in this case, he kind of gets pushed over the edge because 11 was like they got into a big fight about whether Will's alive, dead. She's been purposely messing with him. So Lucas finally had enough.
Yeah, because in his eyes, like he's like, no, they found Will's body. Like I don't know what we're out here doing. All we're doing it based on her word, but she's not saying anything or doing anything.
Well, and then they find out that she was actually purposely changing the compasses. So
right.
he got really ticked off. Mike was still trying to defend her. Mike and Lucas go into a huge fight, and 11 throws Lucas across like the field and ends up like hitting a car.
Yeah.
And so obviously they get really hurt, and like you get that classic division in the group. But obviously they decide to go about finding Will in their own way. And afterwards is when we deal with the monster. And so the opening for episode 6 is when Jonathan saves her from the monster. They go back and decide we're going to kill it.
Yeah, as the portal's like closing.
Yeah,
right?
because the portal's like kind of like.
Well, that's another thing that's like not really explained at all is the fact that all these other portals are opening, right?
Well,
but they're not saying, oh, it's like a fracture off of the main one. Mm-hmm. As far as the people, the scientists are concerned, there's the one, and so they can witness what is and isn't coming in and out of it.
Well, from what it looked like is like the monster is able to sense, let's just assume prey,
right.
And he's
or
able
blood,
to
right?
and he can open up new ones like he was doing on his own, because it happened with Joyce in her house. Like the more Will tried to communicate with her, the monster, like obviously you could tell the monster was coming.
Right, was doing the Ghostbusters through the front door.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought and I think that's kind of, at least for me, that's where I think it is. The monster is able to make open up more cracks.
Yeah.
In between them. But obviously because, Jonathan saved her, Steve saw them plotting together in her room and he got all jealous, and then that became a whole nother issue altogether. Steve.
Well, yeah, and you're kind of like made to like kind of hate Steve throughout the entire series up until this point.
Yeah.
And then that's when
it
starts kind of...
He's essentially been almost a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's at the end of this episode that you actually kind of start
feeling that he's a little deeper than just... Like, he's not just playing Nancy.
Yeah.
He clearly does actually have...
Yeah, like the whole time you're almost set up to, like, again, those classic 80 films where you think, like, all right, he's the popular kid who's, like, pretending to like the loser girl and, like... get her all set up to then just like shut her down or blow her off or
pour blood on her.
Yeah. Thinks that he can convince her to like sleep with him because like, she's just so over enthralled for the attention from him. So like you're getting all this feeling from him, and then like, yeah, you're starting to see that turn where you realize like that's not been.
I mean, that's one of the greatest things about this show, honestly, is the fact that like it kind of turns everything on its head. Like all the things you're made to believe are
just turn upside down?
Yeah, upside down almost. Oh. Wait, what happened? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, that's really where I start caring for him as a character. I'm like, okay, I can see he's kind of human now. He's actually getting kind of hurt mostly, but hurt nonetheless. Yeah. And, you kind of feel for him. And Jonathan, like, I don't know. There's just something about Jonathan and Nancy I don't like. Those are the two characters I don't care for at all. I don't see their motivations at all. I don't see why they're necessary to the plot. I
think Jonathan's a little too creeper on Nancy.
Right.
Well,
a little too creeper on her.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that he's still creepy, but I mean, and to a certain extent, you understand it just because of how like his family
disconnected he is from the rest of his
family.
town.
Like he's basically had to be Will's father. And he's had to defend his mom. He's dealt with his dad and mother being super.
Yeah, he's probably always been the outcast.
So like it's somewhat understandable. Like he's always been on the outskirts, and the fact that his hobby is photography, obviously that requires you to be on the outskirts. So it makes more sense that he kind of comes off creepy. But he is a very good brother. For one, he is a super good brother. Yeah. And I mean, he is obviously there. He's willing to do what
caring.
He needs. He's very caring.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. Like I said,
if I had to pick between the two of them, I say Jonathan is way more necessary than Nancy is. Nancy is more of like
a foil for Jonathan, and that's it. Literally it.
But
that's all she is, right?
Yeah, and so
a connection to Steve.
Yeah,
who you need, right?
Yeah. So they kind of make their own plan on how they're going to attack the monster. You also get an introduction to Eleven's real life mom.
Yeah.
Hopper and Joyce end up finding out that Brenner, who is the facility guy who runs the facility, was testing kids and stole this woman's baby as soon as they basically said that the baby didn't make it or something like that,
Right.
and they just took the baby for testing ever since she was born.
Yet another X-Files kind of reference.
Yeah. So they go and visit her, and obviously she looks like she's just kind of out of it, right? She only repeats several phrases, and she just stares off into space and to TV. So
Yeah, she's basically catatonic.
Yeah. 11, by the way, at this point, Mike got angry at 11, so
For breaking up the group.
yeah,
basically.
for breaking up the group, and she had been on her own, so she kind of is doing her own thing at this point, and this is where you kind of get the final reconciliation of the group for the most part. Is while Mike and Dustin are kind of doing their own thing, looking for Will, they get stopped by the bullies. And the bullies are now threatening Dustin with a knife. And they try to get Mike to jump from this cliff. He's saved by 11. And then everyone kind of comes together and, everyone feels good.
Yeah.
So you kind of get that nice regroup. But the interesting thing actually happens with Lucas. Like I said, Lucas and them had been kind of on their own. Lucas went to the facility to find Will. And he actually started seeing some lab guys heading out, going towards the town, and that's kind of where that episode leaves off.
Probably arguably one of the best scenes of the entire series comes after that.
Oh yeah,
That's the next episode.
Yeah, but do you feel like that this is where you're really starting to get amped up for the episodes?
It's really getting interesting, right? Ever since the monster really kind of shows up, they really start making the show really just start moving.
Yeah, because they got to close all those ties and make sure everything runs smoothly.
And I felt like these last two episodes were just so well done.
Really, they could have just made it one giant ending episode. It probably would have been better.
Better maybe. They still kind of, because you could technically say the show ends here with this next episode.
Yeah.
And the last episode is just kind of let's put a nice little bow on top and make it all good. But it's really interesting what they decide to do with this one. The bathtub. So they found out exactly how... so the group gets together. They find out that the lab guys were after them. They make an escape. And... you have Steve, who, again, this is where you feel good, because they basically had really messed up Nancy's name. They called her a slut and all that stuff. Steve felt bad about it, defended her, and actually went to go make things right. And he does it on his own. Nobody forced him. And not even Nancy really knew about it. But so you can kind of see that reconciliation. He ends up meeting with Nancy and Jonathan, who had gone to Jonathan's house to prep to go fight this monster, which it almost felt like a little Home Alone type scenario right there. I don't know if anybody else, but it felt like a little Home Alone. They set up this gas can.
The bear trap in the middle of the hallway.
They had a spiked bat.
Yeah.
They were ready to go. So
yeah, but the best job is when they go to buy all that stuff, and it's what are you kids doing with all this? And it's monster hunting.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was such a good scene. That was so funny for me. Just because it's perfectly depicted there. So they get all set up and Steve is obviously just, I don't know what you guys are doing when he's over at the house. In the meantime, the kids.
The teenagers that's when because the whole fight happens before the whole reconciliation of writing slut, Nancy's a slut or whatever. I don't know, this is I think that's the thing. I don't really care about the relationships. I care about the kids. I care about that's one of the things I they're focused on this. It's clearly a C or D plot, I guess, at this point, because it's just not interesting. It's you're interested in the chase. It's almost like E.T., right? So I just watched E.T. the other day. You're not interested in what the parents are doing, or it's all about the kids. Focus on the kids. You got to take that thing from Spielberg. Stop worrying about the teenagers. They don't pay attention to Big Brother the whole movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wish they would have gotten even more quicker into the main the finale, as opposed to focusing on all this other stuff.
But I mean, it is kind of cool too. That I do feel they kind of go off on some of these side stories a lot and everything. But I do also really appreciate
The depth,
how much it's focused on the kids, and then cool, you get to build all these characters, which is nice. So you get to see when they play off of these other characters, how nice it is. But then I love how easily and readily they just kind of have the parents just. I mean, the majority of the show, these parents have no idea where their kids are and what they're doing. And that's wonderful. It just takes you back to being a kid. I was like, yep, I left in the morning and I showed up before dark. That was it.
And that's the thing is the parents are just like, oh, aren't they over your house? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they're out there.
Well, yeah,
somewhere.
The dad, right? Where they're arguing, he's like, what? I don't know. What? How this
they're at the dinner table.
Yeah, he's not even paying attention.
And he's just eating, and they're having this big family argument, and the dad's just eating his dinner.
He's like,
and then everybody
storms off. Potatoes are really good.
After everybody stormed off from the table, he's just like, what?
What'd
I do?
Yeah, the wife just glares at him.
But because we're gonna try to wrap this up pretty quick. So essentially they are able to, because they still were trying to find Barb, so they found the way to amplify Eleven's power using that bathtub with salt.
The sensory deprivation.
Exactly. So they created their own, and they found out Barb was dead there. You saw the pretty gruesome end of Barb. And Joyce and Hopper at that point also broke into Hawkins to go into the Upside Down and rescue Will. They went into the actual main rift at Hawkins. They decided, we're just going to go in and find Will, because she knew that something was really off. And all you see is Will inside Castle Byers in the Upside Down, and the monster broke in. So last episode.
So real quick, to kind of cut you off there.
Thanks.
The only problem I had with that whole scene of the sensory deprivation tank and all that stuff
is that it's not really a sensory deprivation tank.
I mean, there's that. I mean, it was a makeshift one. It was the best they could do with what they had, whatever. But my big question is, why did they do it at the school?
Supplies are there.
The only thing that was there that they needed was the salt. Everything else they needed was at the house.
How many pounds of salt was it? It was
1,500 but it's still pounds? They did it in the gym. Yeah. So it's not like they did it in the shed where all the salt was. They still had to pack up all the salt and transfer it to the gym. Whereas they could have thrown it all in the back of Hopper's truck and then drove it back to the house.
Maybe they were on a time constraint, so it's easier to transport it from one point to the school to the other point of the school.
And to keep from transporting the salt back to the house, you had to transport everybody and the pool to the school, and then they had to go into another shed to find all these hoses to attach all these hoses at random spigots in the school, spigots in the or in the gym, and then run those hoses all the way out. Where you had all this stuff readily available at the house.
Well, we don't really know how far
pick up salt.
We don't really know how far apart the house was from the school.
It could be on the other side of the
train. It could be a 30-40 minute drive.
Yeah, I mean they do also talk about when they're kind of mapping stuff out, trying to figure out where Will went missing and all that stuff. They talk about how their house is the one that's on the outskirts of the town. But even then, I still feel it would have been easier.
It's close enough that the kids ride their bike there.
Yeah, right? you could have been hey, we'll set up the pool and start filling it with water. Hopper, you take somebody, run to the school, grab all the salt, and meet us back here.
You know what?
that was just the only thing. Of everything they were doing, I watched that part, and I was
okay. So I think
why are they at the school?
I have the answer. We all know the answer. It's clearly for a montage!
Montage.
That's really what it was, right? It's the only montage kind of thing where they kind of all of them are working in together and getting shit done or whatever, So
the last episode comes down to Hopper and Joyce finding Will in the Upside Down, but he's all
he's allowed in the the thing. They kind of break in or force them to, because what is that? That was after. No, that's I'm sorry. I mean,
Hopper forced himself in with the gun.
Right.
He threatened himself in. This one, they actually just straight up broke in and they kind of made their way through it.
Yeah.
And they find Will, who's hooked up all alien style with this thing going down his throat.
at the school, because it was in the school, wasn't it? Where
It was in the Upside Down. And
I'm saying in the Upside Down
the
school.
location in the Upside Down was still in the school.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So they are able to get him out. They bring him out, but he's unconscious. So they're trying to revive him. At this point, though, the monster decides to pay a visit to Jonathan, Nancy, and Steve.
Steve's there to apologize to Jonathan for getting in a fight or whatever.
To Nancy for that happening.
But no, because he went to Jonathan's house. Nancy, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
That's right. You're right.
He was there to apologize to Jonathan.
So.
And then, obviously, he just sees this monster, and he starts freaking the crap out, so he gets the spiked bat and starts beating on it.
Yeah.
And then they get, they kind of lead it around the house to where it gets caught in the bear trap, and they burn that sucker, and they all run for it, and
it's just gone.
Yeah, and then the monster just disappears, and the next time it shows up, though, is at the school. And
because it senses 11.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason.
And they kind of get cornered into this classroom.
And because the monster agents are still closing in on 11.
That's right.
So that's still really what they're trying to get. They're not really concerned with the monster. They're concerned with 11. Getting 11 is the main plot of their story.
And then the monster ends up attacking the agents and killing them,
right?
Including Brenner. And it starts chasing the kids too. But right before it gets the kids, because they made a little joke earlier on saying, they had a wrist rocket.
Slingshot.
First of all, it's a wrist rocket.
It's a wrist rocket. They call it a wrist rocket. We're gonna go with a wrist rocket. And they had picked out a stone. They're like, oh yeah, this is the monster killer. So they load it up and they shoot it style into the monster. But the funny bit about it is, as soon as it hits it, this thing gets flown up and smashed up against the wall, which you find out 11's behind them to stop the monster. And then you get the tearful
she had
goodbye.
Passed out, or wasn't she passed out and they were carrying her, or was she running with them?
I want to say,
I don't even remember.
What had happened to her?
Do you remember?
She got knocked. I think she did get knocked out.
Right, because she used her powers to try to
she used
find...
her powers... Well, she used her powers for that, so she was already weak, and then she used her powers to kill a lot of the agents.
That's right.
And all the kids got cornered. She killed a lot of the agents, and then so she was super weak and stuff after that, so they were kind of carrying her, basically. And so they figured that she was just kind of
Yeah, because they kind of laid her down, and they were in front of her. So, yeah.
And then she basically just ends up saying a tearful goodbye to Mike, and... Now, this part kind of confused me because it didn't really make a lot of sense to what she was doing. Because she ends up
they hint in the middle of the show is that she is the monster, and that the monster is a part of her, and that's where the monster is coming from.
So you kind of get the feeling that what you were leading to is that when she vaporizes this monster away, she disappears with it
because she is part of. She's
so you kind of get the feeling at the end of this episode that her being around is what's causing all these rifts and causing all these openings, and so in order to finalize it, to not only get rid of the monster but to keep things from coming back, she also has to
go away,
Yeah.
be gone, and
because she's the one that opened the rift to begin with.
Yeah.
So
she ends up disappearing
by screaming really loud.
Yeah. Well,
like Banshee.
Yeah. It was a cool scene. But she disappears. Mike is obviously very sad, and it fast forwards to 1 month later. And it looks like Nancy and Steve are a happy couple.
Well, no. You're forgetting a huge important part.
Am I?
Is that they find Will in the Upside Down.
I said that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I totally ignored you.
Wow. Thanks, guys. That was the first thing I mentioned, because that's what happened first thing in the episode.
Yeah, they had to resuscitate him. And
Yeah. But everyone's pretty happy. Nancy and Steve are a happy couple, but they're friends with Jonathan still. Will and all the kids end up finishing their D&D game they had started at the beginning of the season. Everyone's all happy. It's Christmas time. You know, can't go wrong with Christmas.
No.
And the last major scene is Will's in the bathroom coughing up some slug. And then immediately, like, the entire background turns the upside down and then flashbacks.
Right. So you get kind of the feeling that it's not completely done.
No.
Yeah.
And that, or maybe he's having PTSD from it, because who wouldn't? Yeah. So it's I don't know. So I mean, the overall ending of the story, like, I really liked how quick it did move to, like, the finishing of the show, the season. You know, you finally get to see the Will kid act a little bit.
Yeah.
That poor kid just got.
Well, I really like this ending because I really like. I mean, especially when you have shows that come on like on Netflix and stuff like this now, and then during our generation, how many shows we've loved that have been randomly canceled out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I really loved and appreciated this ending because the show could have ended there.
Right.
And like, yeah, it was a cliffhanger with the slug coming out and the snap to that upside down or whatever, but you still could have ended the series there and been like, wow, that was really good, and then just have that burning question of like, you know, what's going on? Yeah, is he still there? You know, the kind of like Inception question. But it also leaves it open to where you can now continue it and still have something to go off of.
To go back to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Stranger Things. That is Stranger Things Season 1.
Yeah. So any final thoughts for you guys?
It was a great show.
Yeah, I loved it.
It's a great show.
I absolutely loved it.
I'm
rating?
really excited. Oh, if I had to give it a rating, I'd give it a solid 8.
Really?
8 out of
I'd give it a 7.
Oh,
Come on. That's the obvious answer.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was great.
7 out of 7.
I'm excited for us to...
Or 11. 11, I guess it would be, right?
Yeah, 11 would be the right answer.
I'm thinking James Bond, I guess. 007.
007. But yeah, so I mean, I thought it was great. I'm excited. It's like here in probably about 2 weeks or so, we'll talk about Stranger Things Season 2.
Hoorah.
And go from that. So hope you guys get caught up because there will be a lot of spoilers.
Oh,
yeah.
And just telling you now, spoilers. The entire thing will be spoilers.
By the way, everything we just talked about, kind of a spoiler. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I don't think so. I think
There's still a lot of surprises for you.
I think we left the mystery.
Anyways, this is Joe.
Scotty P.
And Patrick.
I don't know.
When darkness